name's Bond. James Bond. What a helpful chap.
Hey there, and welcome back to Being James Bond. It's your good buddy, head of section, as always, Joseph Darlington. Today we're ranking the films of Roger Moore. Looking just a little bit different than I did last time. I mean, has it really been that long since we did the first one? It doesn't feel like that long, but I guess it is. But anyway, here we are, and we're talking about the reigning champ, Sir Roger Moore. Roger Moore did 7 official James Bond films, which makes him the reigning champ. The most Bond films of any actor. So let's get into it. Let's rank the films. Coming in at number 7 with a tepid score of 2, which I think maybe in retrospect was a little harsh, but I'll explain why. My number 7 pick, Moonraker. Okay, if you saw my other re-ranking video, you'll know that I actually enjoy this movie a lot more than my score lets on. It's the very definition of a guilty pleasure. Scott said in our review that this film is eager to please, and I have a hard time arguing with that. It's a film that's kind of known for its excess. The plot is basically a redo of The Spy Who Loved Me. Megalomaniacal, uber-rich bad guy wants to destroy the world and repopulate with a master race. The plot has become standard fare at this point, so on the surface I don't have a problem with the story. And I kind of think it does it even a little bit better than The Spy Who Loved Me. The whole Noah's Ark story kind of fleshes out the bad guy's plan a little bit more. There are a lot of really great individual scenes. Roger Moore is his charming self. The opening skydiving scene is awesome. It's a little undercut, the obvious shots of the stuntman, intertwined with some really obvious back projection, and some over-the-top comedy moments. But still, this mid-air mano-a-mano fighting, real stuntmen doing this, really great stuff. Oh, and the centrifuge scene is also really good. Not crazy about how Bond gets out of it, but still well executed, and Roger Moore is here to work. The scene of Corinne running through the woods for her life, really haunting stuff. Almost becomes a different film for a second there. So again, there's some good stuff here, but then it just gets a little goofy. And I'm not even talking about the extreme parts yet, just the tone of the film has a really awkward, goofy quality. The feel of the film gets as far from realistic as possible. There's some awkward moments where some people look like they're not even really trying. It's borderline fourth wall breaking. It is very self-aware, and it's here to entertain, which it does effectively. But it's probably as far from a thriller as you can possibly get. Oh, and how about that gondola chase? I mean, you what can you say about this? I mean, it's just, this is a cartoon. This is a cartoon at this point. So yeah, so when you start to get into the Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote antics of James Bond and Jaws, this film is aimed at a younger audience, or the youngster in all of us, which again is fine, but probably not my particular brand of James Bond. I don't even have to get into the whole James Bond in space thing. It puts itself right out there. It says this is over-the-top, fun, spectacle, so it's kind of hard to pick on it. And by the way, this is one of those films that we should thank for bringing in younger Bond fans. This film did pull in a whole new generation of James Bond fans that have remained fans to this day. And interestingly, it's not like the series wasn't able to bounce back and get back to more realistic stories. So what else can you say about Moonraker? It's over-the-top, wacky hijinks, and it goes to show that James Bond can be whatever it needs to be at any given time. The series has had many incarnations, and this is just one where they just said, let's go crazy. It's a favorite of many and a guilty pleasure for some, myself included. At number 6, a film that I've had a love-hate relationship for quite a while, I won't lie, with a score of 4, which is kind of just shy of my mid-range of the Bond films. A guilty pleasure for many, myself included, A View to a Kill. Not too dissimilar from Moonraker, and yes, this was another one that came way higher on the list in my re-ranking video. Here's another film where my inner voice just can't seem to settle on how I feel about this film. It's a weird, self-aware, goofy Bond outing, but it seems to do it really well. Unlike, say, Diamonds Are Forever, where the film is trying to be lighthearted and fun, but it leaves me feeling more confused than entertained. A View to a Kill does something similar, but I think it gets the jokes right. I find that I'm more able to just relax and enjoy it for what it actually is. Roger Moore is charming as ever. I feel like when he's going undercover as James St. John Smythe, it's really Roger Moore playing Roger Moore. Roger Moore has always been a man of leisure, and that's never more apparent than right here. The chemistry between Bond and Patrick Macnee is really awesome. They really do play well off each other. Hey, by the way, why does James Bond get a cover name, but Tibbet is still Tibbet? Wouldn't that tip off the bad guys? The film also recycles a pretty standard plot. It's basically Goldfinger, except with microchips. Now, whether or not microchips would work the same way, I think it still works. The locations are great. I mean, you're literally getting the Eiffel Tower, the Chateau of Chantilly, San Francisco. I mean, this all works. But of course, it just gets really goofy. Now, any critic will tell you that Roger Moore is looking his age, but that's not even what bothers me, because there are great stories to be told about a seasoned agent who's a little past his prime. But the problem is this. I mean, there's a couple awkward moments. Roger Moore himself said he knew his time was up when he was actually older than his leading lady's mother. I mean, they had just come off a really good pairing with James Bond and Octopussy, two people who were seasoned, similar in age, and then here they just go the totally opposite direction with Tanya Roberts. And they did kind of get into the stunt casting here. Christopher Walken is a well-known actor and perfectly cast as a Bond villain, but of course they make him look a little over the top. Grace Jones, a very over-the-top personality in the 80s, and I think she's fine, by the way, don't get me wrong. I think she makes a really good henchperson, but she does lend to an over-the-top cast. I mean, look at this guy, the German mad scientist with a monocle? So we're moving from character to caricature. And as Scott will point out, there's a lot of talky scenes in this. As opposed to letting us find things out for ourselves through the actions of the film, they just tell us through a lot of dialogue. The fight scenes are also really clunky because of Moore's age. Now again, I'm not saying Roger was too old for this one, but you needed to handle the physical scenes better. You have the fire truck chase with the Keystone Cops, not terrible, but again, it just feels like it's a little gratuitous. Like there's no need for this scene, but we'll throw it in anyway. I mean, I guess the reason why I scored this film so low is that if you look at a film like From Russia with Love, if that's the pinnacle of a James Bond film, this is the polar opposite. I mean, in Dr. No, James Bond takes out a man like this.
Why?
Because I had to.
In A View to a Kill, it's more like this.
Where's the fire? On your rear end. Give me a hand.
Again, it's a very cartoony James Bond. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned this part yet. I mean, as bad as that is, I'll still argue that it does set the tone for the film. It lets you know that you're in for some self-aware fun and just relax and enjoy it. And the score is fantastic. I think the score really does bring this film up a notch. It's almost like Barry's tribute to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but just dialed up to 11. All in all, another guilty pleasure. If you just relax and let yourself, you can really enjoy this film. At number 5, with a score of 5, kind of putting it, again, right at the mid-range of the Bond films. Don't love it, don't hate it. But let's talk about why. The Man with the Golden Gun. Now, I scored this film a 5 because I find it to be perfectly lukewarm. There's nothing in it that I really love, but there's nothing in it that I really don't like either. It's pretty inoffensive, it's not very memorable, it's just kind of there. So maybe in retrospect, maybe my 5 is too generous. Maybe the crime of being a bland Bond film is even worse than being outrageous and over the top. I mean, if I think about a film in terms of which DVD is going to get the least amount of fingerprints on it, it's got to be The Man with the Golden Gun. Again, it's not that I actively dislike the film. I just never think of it. There's not a lot going on here that I really get excited about. I mean, there's a few really good scenes. The scene with Bond and Lazar is pretty good. It's got some good lines.
So speak, or forever hold your peace.
Bond back in an Asian location is really good. Maud Adams is great. Britt Eklund is really good, even though she kind of gets the shaft for most of the film. Or doesn't. Alright, that was a poor choice of words. I've heard it said before that the 60s was the sexual revolution, but the 70s is when all the salacious bestsellers came out. And the Bond films were starting to touch on that 60s sex comedy thing. So I guess it's no surprise that there's a scene of Bond hiding one girl in the closet while he's having a roll in the hay with another one only a few feet away. It's just so cringy though. There's also a ton of nudity in this film. It wasn't until I rewatched it that I really started to get a sense of just how much nudity was here.
It's a surprise.
Oh, a surprise.
I think Knick Knack was interesting. Nice change of pace and a twist on the traditional henchman.
I've never killed a midget before, but there can always be a first time.
Oh, monsieur.
And of course, Scaramanga is spectacular. I think you needed an actor with the gravitas of Christopher Lee to drive the point home that this villain is Bond's mirror image. So it's a really good pairing, I just don't know if it actually hits the height that it should have. The Scaramanga Funhouse is a product of its day, but yeah, it could have been done a little bit better. And I haven't even gotten around to this guy yet.
Goddamn little brown water hog!
Oh, what's the matter, J.W. Hub?
You just try that in my bayou, boy! I'd hold your ass!
I mean, it's not that they brought back another character for a second Bond film. It's just, why would this character be in Thailand of all places? I mean, you're really trying to tell me that this guy would actually vacation anywhere outside the United States, much less Thailand? All the action scenes to me are pretty lame. I mean, the car chase is passable. There's at least one really good stunt in it, which as we know is kind of ruined with the sound effect. Like, even this boat chase. I mean, this followed up the incredible boat chase from Live and Let Die with something that was just barely a boat chase. And again, the climax is just kind of eh. So yeah, again, I scored it a 5, which I think just illustrates how tricky it can be to try to score and rank these films. But yeah, it's not terrible, it's not great, it's just kind of there. So I guess that's all I can say about this one. At number 4, coming up in the ranks a little bit with a score of 6, a favorite of many. Again, another one that I've kind of wrestled with a little bit. Live and Let Die. Definitely better than The Man with the Golden Gun. Live and Let Die gets my respect because it's taking more chances.
Well, you just keep on the tail of that jukebox and there's an extra 20 in it for you.
Hey, man, for $20, I'll take you to a Ku Klux Klan cookout.
Like Moonraker, like The Man with the Golden Gun, the Bond films were trying their hand at mingling with other genres, and blaxploitation was a popular genre at that time. And I find that it does create a rich, interesting backdrop for the Bond adventure. Jane Seymour is stunning as Solitaire, the rest of the cast is great, Gloria Hendry as Rosie Carver.
But you couldn't. You wouldn't. Not after what we just done.
I certainly wouldn't have killed you before.
And I love the idea of Quarrel Jr. Naturally, when they did the books out of order, how do you bring back Quarrel after killing him off in Dr. No? So this was a pretty interesting way to bring Quarrel back and kind of stay in continuity. And of course, Yaphet Kotto as Mr. Big and Kananga, I think is really underrated. As far as I'm concerned, he's actually playing 3 characters. Obviously playing the urban gangster Mr. Big, the more sophisticated diplomat Dr. Kananga, but then the 2 identities merge and almost seem to form a 3rd character, like the amalgam of all his personalities come into one. The action is pretty good. The out-of-control car on the FDR drive, it's a good example of an action scene that never really hits any heights. The boat chase is great. I mean, it's got to be one of the best boat chases in the series, and that's saying something. So the film is an interesting time capsule. It doesn't quite hit the heights of some of the other Roger Moore films, but it's still a pretty solid entry. We're cracking the top 3. These are my top 3 favorite James Bond films with a score of 7, and I think a lot of people might find that slightly dismissive. This is a favorite of many. I can certainly understand it. Boy, is it a competent film. I admire it. I enjoy it. I don't love it as much as many, but again, I think a 7 is pretty respectable. The Spy Who Loved Me. I think this is the moment where the Roger Moore films really started to hit their stride. They really pulled out all the stops for this one. The world record-breaking opening ski jump, this tells you right from the get-go that this Bond film is going to be bigger than life. Now, needless to say, this is also a lot of cartoony fun, which, as you know, is not always my cup of tea, but I have to give this one the respect it deserves. It changes up enough of the formula to keep things interesting, but it also really perfects the formula in other ways. A perfect example is the Lotus car chase. They don't do just enough. They keep upping and upping the stakes. I mean, it starts off with a motorcycle chase and an explosion. That could have been a scene right there. But then it goes up a notch with Jaws, with another over-the-top climax.
Mamma mia, che è successo?
Then you get the helicopter chase with Naomi.
You ever got the feeling somebody doesn't like you?
Then it tops off with the underwater Lotus scene. I mean, this film gives you everything plus the kitchen sink. Plus, despite being over the top in some scenes, there are other scenes that pull it back down again. I love the nautical scenes, with the military higher-ups talking. Again, now it's kind of got this classic Cold War James Bond feel again. The locations are great, Anya as Triple X is really stunning, and again, the structure and pacing of this film really works. Look at the relationship between Bond and Anya. It really goes through every individual step along the way. For something that's just light and fun, this relationship is really a roller coaster ride. They meet, they are adversaries, they play off each other a little bit, they are forced to join forces, they go through some rough times together and become romantic. Now, normally I don't like it when they rush the romance, but here it works perfectly because the relationship is about to take a dramatic turn. Things get heated and tense, but through some more trials where Bond proves himself, everything works out in the end. I really like how that plays out. The plot itself is also structured right, and the pacing is perfect. Similar to You Only Live Twice, you get a classic climax where the cavalry arrives for an epic battle. But it doesn't end there, Bond still has to rescue Anya. So there's a buildup of tension, increasing stakes. And again, it's physical stakes plus emotional stakes. The supporting cast is great, Naomi is a classic Bond girl. Even the great Shane Rimmer is awesome here. So again, it still falls into that over-the-top fun category. Not nearly as over-the-top as Moonraker, but it really hit that sweet spot that I think audiences were looking for at that time. Definitely a winner for Roger Moore. We're in the top two. The top two, and I have to tell you, these two oftentimes wrestle for my number one spot. I love them both, and I scored them both a 9. Again, just shy of perfection in my eyes. No pun intended. Again, I've loved this one since I saw it. For your eyes only. You know, whenever I talk about Roger Moore, there's usually two big reasons why I have to give him a lot of credit. The first is simply that he's making the kind of films that audiences wanted at that time. We might look back at them now as being a little too silly, over the top, but it's also probably the reason why we still have James Bond today. When audiences were looking for something more than the classic From Russia with Love type stories, Roger Moore's James Bond was here to entertain, and kept the series going strong. But the other thing I have to give him a ton of credit for is that, when the series wanted to get back down to earth and do more grittier thrillers, they did not have to recast James Bond. Roger Moore could do fun, over the top, yet still do a kind of realistic spy thriller that I think For Your Eyes Only is. And Roger pulls it off perfectly. So I'll just say it, I think For Your Eyes Only is easily one of the greatest Bond films of all time. For me, this film feels like it ranks right up there with the Fab Four, Dr. No through Thunderball, the golden age of James Bond. For me, this film fits right in there. It brings the stakes back down to earth, which make the action scenes that much more thrilling. In fact, I feel like in some ways, this film is the spiritual successor to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I'll touch on the obvious references shortly, but just the tone of the film. I feel like we're back to the realistic tone that we had in those perfect 60s Bond movies. It's trying again to be a film that exists in the real world. Then of course you get Bond visiting Tracy's grave, you get the return of Blofeld, now of course you get this.
I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel!
Man, I would love to edit that out. and even some of the action scenes. I think the ski scene here is easily the best one after On Her Majesty's. The locations are great. I love watching Bond explore Greece. This scene alone is just so quintessential James Bond for me. I really wish you had more scenes like this in the later Bond films. When they slow down and take in the scenery, man, I love that. Roger Moore looks good. He's definitely looking a little more seasoned, but still not past his prime. You have a great supporting cast. I think Topol as Columbo, boy does he work really well. He's definitely in that category of Kerim Bey, Mark-Ange Draco, allies that are a little older, a little more seasoned, and I think Columbo gets more of a chance to emote. You get more of his character. I love Bond seducing Liesel for information. Again, classic espionage. The morning after scene, again, really thrilling stuff. I love how it's shot. I love how it's executed. Really good stuff. And Bond getting pulled in to meet Columbo. It's kind of got that feel from when he first met Draco. I love the twist. And again, how come we haven't seen this more often? Bond is double-crossed. He's played. I think this is a great storyline. I think the action scenes are great. I mentioned the ski sequence. Again, I think it's easily the best one since On Her Majesty's. And I kind of like that this happens at a resort. Like, it's a perfectly believable setting for a ski sequence. It makes for some really tense moments. The car chase is incredible. First off, I love the symbolism of the Lotus blowing up. The fact that Bond is in this car doesn't really work right. It's small, not very effective. It makes for a great scene. Because again, Bond is relying on his wits. It's shot well, edited well, and even the tiny touches of how Bond relies on the local caller for help. Just love it. The underwater scenes are great. Bond doing battle with the guy in the big diving suit. Again, makes the guy look mammoth and imposing. The way he gets out of it, the way it ends, I just love it. The keel hauling scene, right out of Live and Let Die. Great stuff. Again, Bond relying on his wits to get out of it. And come on, the rock climbing scene, this is incredible. Talk about a scene that'll take your breath away. And of course, I can't not mention this scene.
You left this with Ferrara, I believe.
Have no head for heights.
I mean, again, could you imagine Roger Moore doing this? One of the most badass moments in Bond history, and it's a Roger Moore movie.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned.
That's putting it mildly, 007.
All in all, I think For Your Eyes Only is spectacular, easily one of the best James Bond movies of all time. And my number one favorite Roger Moore James Bond film. No surprise to anybody, I have spoken at great length about how much I adore this film. For years, I called it one of the most underrated Bond films, but I think genuine fans have really come to love this film and really come to appreciate all the things it brings to the table. I find it to be nearly perfect, and it was a childhood favorite. It got me into James Bond. Let's talk about it. Octopussy. Yeah, you knew this was going to be number one. It's the film that got me into James Bond when I was only 13 years old. But even when I take my nostalgia glasses off, I swear this is easily one of the best, most classic Bond films of all time. It really has everything. Let's start with the structure. It's the only James Bond movie that I can think of that starts off with a genuine mystery. It sets something in motion. A clown running through the woods, getting chased by two knife-wielding circus performers, crashing into the embassy with the Fabergé egg. I mean, what is this all about? And we spend most of the movie unpacking different clues, bits being revealed little by little. But the finale of the film, that's when everything comes together. And it's a nail-biting finale. People sometimes give this one a hard time because Bond is wearing a clown suit, but they're missing the point. Bond has done everything he can do to get here, but now the fact that he's wearing the clown suit doesn't help him. But at the last second, everything comes together. The fact that he was able to bring Octopussy to his side is part of what saves the day. But within this structure, I think all of the elements work perfectly. Again, we only learn things little by little. I love the scene at Sotheby's. Again, that's classic James Bond. Fleming's Bond would do battle across card tables, on the golf course, unorthodox ways for him to do battle against his opponent, and in an elegant setting like Sotheby's. You can't get more Fleming than this. The cast is great, bringing back Maude Adams to play opposite Roger Moore. Such a good move, similar in age, seasoned characters with years of experience. They're a perfect match. Again, they're handling Roger Moore's age perfectly. The fight scenes are more fluid. Bond seems to be fighting with his brains and experience. Louis Jourdan is a perfect villain for Roger Moore. Again, we always like those mirror opposites of James Bond. I think Louis Jourdan is it. Playboys, men of leisure. We get a classic henchman, the character of Magda. Again, stunning. And we get a classic espionage scene. This is right out of Dr. No. It's like Bond and Miss Taro all over again. I like the minor character of Jim Fanning. He's only here to walk Bond through this one event, but again, he's telling the audience how we should feel about what's happening. It works perfectly. Even the pre-title sequence. First of all, the girl is stunning, and I love that it's a self-contained sequence. It's like a short story into itself. Bond has a mission, it goes wrong, he escapes, but finds another unorthodox way to complete the mission. Just perfect.
Fill her up, please.
General Orlov is great. Again, we get a Bond that's touching on the Cold War. We're still doing battle with the Russians. Even though this is sort of a lone wolf general off doing his own thing, we still get that Cold War flavor. The action is great. The yo-yo fight scene is fantastic. Very original, very creative. I like the presence of Q. I like that you see him in the field. Bond has run out of allies. Q has to step up and help. Works really well. The train scene is great. I love the car on the tracks.
Follow that car.
It's great when Bond is doing the improbable but not the impossible. This whole sequence is exciting, nail-biting, really good stuff. And again, all leading to the great climax, and then the showdown, the assault on Kamal's palace, and of course the airplane scene. I mean, this one has everything.
Really, 007.
It gets the characters right, it gets the tone right, the action is believable, and there's only one or two things that really keep this from being perfect for me. But it's just shy of being a perfect 10, a classic near-perfect Bond film. If you're not already a fan of this movie, I highly recommend giving it another shot. So there you go, my favorite Roger Moore films ranked in order. But again, even though I score some of these a little harshly, in the big scheme of things, they're all winners. And I'm not just saying that because, you know, Roger Moore just brings such a charm and elegance to his films that they're just so hard to resist. You know, it's hard not to love these films. So we'll be back. The next one on the pike is going to have to be Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan has 4 films, so we could do a respectable video ranking each one. I'm sure, given the circumstances, I will definitely bring in the films of Timothy Dalton and give them a mention as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, something just to sort of fill up time, but I'm kind of having too much fun with these, so we're going to keep it going. And we'll be back soon with another one. Thanks as always for watching. Check out my Patreon page if you want to be a Patreon supporter. This is your good buddy head of section saying thanks for watching, and I will see you very soon.